The clock is ticking for the Chargers to become cap compliant. Mick Cronin lays out 3 goals for UCLA basketball to shock the world at the Pac-12 Tournament. And USC football has a lot more to worry about than just its defense. Good morning. I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos morning report. So it's March 13, 2024. And by the way, if you like being in the know about LA sports, click-clack the like button. Click-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell. Hit that. It'll let you know we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist. And by all means, comment, because we have an absolute ton to talk about. You got to have an opinion on something, for Pete's sakes. Now, before we go through the news and notes, a quick look at the scoreboard. Minnesota 118, Clippers 100. That's not good. Matter of fact, I'd go so far as to call it craptacular. How bitter would you be if you were a Clippers fan and spent money to watch this? The Clippers blew a 22-point lead and lost by 18. Matter of fact, Kawhi Leonard leaves with a back injury. And then Kawhi leaves the arena, doesn't stay to support the team, so we don't even know how bad the back injury is. We don't know if he's going to be leaving with the team for their road trip today. Clippers, by the way, are just 5-6 since the All-Star break. None of it, again, any good, considering the Clippers were damn near unbeatable for a couple of months. Meanwhile, today, the Lakers are at Sacramento at 7. LeBron James is questionable, which means he's playing. Let's be real. The Pac-12 Tournament opens in Las Vegas today. UCLA is playing Oregon State at 2:30. Mick Cronin coached teams, whether it be the Bruins or Cincinnati, have qualified for every NCAA tournament since 2010. USC is playing Washington at noon. It's also a first-round game. The winner advances to face top-seeded Arizona tomorrow, and the Kings are at St. Louis at 4:30. This clip could be obsolete by the time you see it today. The Chargers have to be cap compliant with no delay. Bars. I'm a 56-year-old man dropping bars. Anyway, but the deadline is at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And when you look at the way that the free agency period has gone so far, does anyone else think that the Chargers put the cart before the horse Monday? Because they went in already over the cap, and they've spent money on at least 3 players, 2 of which, by the way, we mentioned yesterday. For example, we're starting to get the numbers on the contracts. Gus Edwards to be the primary running back for 2 years, $6.5 million, so say at the NFL Network. But the signings, all of these signings, have the earmarks of when my wife tells me she bought something that we really needed and it was on sale, right? Edwards, for example, does come in way cheaper than what the Bolts paid Austin Eckler last year. And if the Chargers play their cards right, Edwards rushing for 1,000 yards is not out of the realm of possibility, because it's been many years since a Chargers running back has hit that. But when my sweet, adorable, and scorching hot wife tells me she bought something that we need and it's on sale, my left arm goes numb. I start to wonder if Dean Spanos asked what I've asked, right? Can't we get our finances in order first before we bring in the old big ticket things? Now, with 3 players signed, and we'll get to the third in just a moment, The Athletic guesstimated that the Chargers have added at least $9 million to the payroll. They went into free agency $21 million over the salary cap. And then, by the way, you also have to have more cap space to sign your draft picks. So the Chargers are what? Maybe $40 million over the line? $40 million? And you have to get it down to cap compliance at 1 p.m.? Now, if you're in the Chargers regime, you knew a few things. You knew that you were hired relatively late to the game. The Spanos family wanted to get the hiring of a new coach and front office just right. This was not going to be a case of firing Brandon Staley on Friday and hiring Jim Harbaugh on Monday. GM Joe Ortiz told the Scribes that they did not even have their plan mapped out as recently as 2 weeks ago. They also knew that they weren't getting squat from Austin Eckler. So believe me, signing Edwards actually does make a ton of sense. All three of the signings make sense, but it comes with a consequence, a big consequence. In order to become cap compliant, you either have to restructure contracts, trade players, or cut them. And we've outlined at least 4 that the Chargers are considering doing that with. So let's say you do want to trade Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, maybe even Keenan Allen. Are teams really that hyped to give you a bunch of assets back when they know that you are under stress to be cap compliant at 1? Why would I break the bank to help you out? I'm not going to give you as much. You're the one that's under pressure to be cap compliant. Or maybe I just sit there, roll the dice, and the Chargers have to cut a bunch of them without without getting anything back in return. So that's troubling. Now, before I paint a picture that makes every Bolts fan want to stick his head in a pizza oven and end it all, they also added a tight end yesterday. That is absolutely an upgraded tight end over anything they had there last year. Will Dissly comes from Seattle. Solid addition, and they did not overpay. So are these players quote unquote bad ideas? I can't say that. But irresponsible against the cap? Possibly. But they needed it. It was on sale. Here's another concern. The Chargers now have to replace both starting linebackers from last year. They cut Eric Kendricks. Kenneth Murray signed a 2-year deal with Tennessee. So if you're a running back on the other team and you get past the Chargers D-line, which was common in the last few years, you're probably getting to the defensive backfield before you say hi to anybody in powder blue. And offensively, they still need somebody reliable at center. If you recall, they finished the regular season with the 3rd string center. Corey Linsley is presumably retiring. Will Clapp is a free agent. Weeks ago, we were discussing how the draftniks, guys who believe Mel Kiper is a man god, and these draftniks believe that there are 2 immediate starting centers in the draft. So the Chargers either have to snag one of those dudes in the first 2 rounds or clear out more cap space for, I don't know, Brian Allen, Coleman Shelton, formerly of the Rams, comes to mind. But that's not a prediction. Clearing out more cap space would have to be a prediction. Now, if you're wondering what the scribes think of these developments, they're not particularly positive. CBS has graded the Chargers offseason so far as a C+, which means that they've low-key hated what the Chargers are doing. But to be honest, I would at least say that I would rather have that than the Chargers won the offseason. Remember, the Chargers won the offseason 2 years ago. They barely reached the playoffs. So yeah, we have a lot of Charger stuff to talk about. UCLA Sebastian Mack was selected to the Pac-12 All-Freshman team. Isaiah Collier of USC also was as well. Also, Adam Bona was named the conference's Defensive Player of the Year. Now, earlier I mentioned Cronin's streak of 12 consecutive NCAA tournaments. He gave the LA Times a 3-point outline to qualify for number 13. 1, be the best defensive team in the Pac-12 tournament. 2, shoot a high percentage. 3, have the top players just go nuts. Sounds great, except they can't shoot. They can't shoot. They try, they don't get, the ball doesn't go through the hoop. Translation, they can't shoot. Defense, oh, absolutely. No doubt about that. We just mentioned that Adam Bona is the best in the conference at it. Go nuts? Sure. We're all one meth hit away from a psychotic break as it is. I can see UCLA going nuts, but they can't shoot. So unless they go on a 3-day bender where everything goes through the hoop, it's a nice plan. I just don't know if it can be executed completely. 2 out of 3, you know what I'm saying? Spring football begins for USC on Tuesday, and we've talked a ton about the defense, which is obvious because the Trojans finally decided to embrace sanity by replacing Alex Grinch with D'Anton Lynn as defensive coordinator. But the offensive line improving this year is almost as necessary. If you recall, 2 seasons ago, Caleb Williams arrived in LA and he already landed with a ready-made offensive line for him. The next year, he was without that line, and you find him weeping in his mama's arms on national TV. So yeah, the offensive line kinda is important. Now, we know very little about what the Trojans are gonna do with offensive line, but it seems to me, from what I'm reading, protecting the quarterback from the center out is a priority, because pretty much anybody with experience at USC is moving to the center. It's moving to the middle of the line. We have reason to believe Jonah Monheim is moving from tackle to the inside. Could be guard, could even be center. We don't know. Emmanuel Pregnon stays at guard. The remaining 3 positions, right now, I would just be throwing stuff against the wall. So again, we've talked a ton about USC's defense, but keep an eye on what USC will be doing with its offensive line, just as vital. The Rams have placed a second-round tender on left tackle and restricted free agent Alaric Jackson. Now, if you're wondering what a tender is, as opposed to a tenderoni, referencing Bobby Brown from the 1980s, what a tender does is if a team makes Jackson an offer, the Rams have the right of first refusal. In other words, the bottom line is this: if he stays in Los Angeles, he'll get a raise, probably to about $5 million. If Jackson goes elsewhere and the Rams decide to let him go, the Rams would get a second-round draft pick as compensation. So I'm not sure Alaric Jackson is worth a second-round pick. I'm not sure. But it sounds like the Rams will keep him on a relatively cheap contract. CBS gave the Rams a B+ for their free agent signings, which means that the Rams did not win the offseason either. But I'll tell you, the Rams offseason is growing on me, because the middle of that offensive line, Matthew Stafford is going to be protected up the middle by 1,000 pounds of muscle. The 2 guards in the center, added together, 1,000 pounds of muscle. So, yeah, I like that. You know, it was totally cool to tell you guys a day or 2 ago that we were going to get an update on Jared Vanderbilt, the injured Lakers forward. You know, we could even suggest that he'd be back before the end of the regular season. That's what a couple of scribes were telling us. Scratch that. The scribes have updated it. The Orange County Register said Vanderbilt hasn't even been cleared to step on a basketball court. Right? Then I read yet another report that said Vanderbilt is progressing forward to a return for next season. So I'm looking at all these stories and it's kind of dawning on me. The scribes have no idea what the hell they're talking about when it comes to Jared Vanderbilt. On the plus side, at least he's no longer wearing a walking boot. That's the only thing we can say with any certainty about him right now. I want to start off this portion of the program by saying I don't believe that this is totally true. But I do want to bring up this topic because if you recall, talking about Mookie Betts at shortstop, LA Times columnist Bill Plaschke wept the bitterest of tears into the handkerchief of sorrow over that move. The tears flowed until Plaschke could no longer see his keyboard. He was so depressed and verklempt, thinking it was a horrible idea to move Mookie Betts to the shortstop position. What a tragedy, right? Well, FoxSports.com decided to rank the top 10 shortstops in the game, and they've already placed Mookie Betts at number 2. Fox Sports believes Mookie Betts is the number 2 shortstop in the game, and he hasn't even played a regular season game at the position yet with the Dodgers. Corey Seager, by the way, is number 1. Now look, again, I'm not saying I buy into this. Trey Turner, another former Dodger, pretty damn good at the shortstopping. The Orioles, high on Gunnar Henderson. I like Bo Bichette. I like Ellie De La Cruz. So what is Fox Sports' argument, you might be asking yourself? It's Mookie freaking Betts. That's the argument. They argue you could put him anywhere on the diamond and Mookie Betts will dominate. So somebody tell the LA Times, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Put it on a parchment. Address it to Sir William of Melancholy. Mookie Betts is not a tragic idea at shortstop. Galaxy assistant coach Nick Thesloff will not be charged after his arrest for alleged public drinky too muchy in Nashville last weekend. So to Tennessee, the case is closed, and whatever, it's Tennessee. Sometimes people do things a little bit too much for their own good. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Talk to me about the Chargers and what they have to do to become cap compliant. Tell me if you think UCLA has a shot of winning the Pac-12 Tournament. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We are talking LA sports every single day now. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Cortell Queso production. Take care.